It nearly ended right here for Alisa Summers. She told investigators her estranged husband kidnapped her, tied her up for 2 days, and tried to kill her. Fortunately, she was able to escape. But today, she wanted to be in court.
I'm doing well. I'm healing. So there's a lot of healing still to be done, but I'm healing.
Alisa and Trevor seemed like the ideal couple. They had a natural connection and shared a warmth that was apparent to those around them. They first crossed paths in 1995 in a school hallway, both attending a high school in the suburbs of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. 3 years later, they officially became a couple. Alisa recalled Trevor as a charismatic man who embraced life fully and always made her feel cared for. Confident that he would continue to treat her this way for the rest of their lives, she accepted his proposal without hesitation. In 2001, they married and settled into a home together. Both shared a desire for a large family, and before long their children began arriving. Their first daughter, Arden, felt like the realization of a dream for them. Alisa had always wanted to dedicate herself to motherhood, caring for the home and raising a family. Over the years, their family grew with the arrival of Landon, Bryn, Grady, and Cooper. Alisa was overjoyed and believed deeply that with each new child, their lives were filled with even more love. While Alisa focused on creating a loving home for their 5 children, Trevor took on the responsibility of earning a living. He initially started a landscape design business, but later shifted to real estate. He saw himself as a natural entrepreneur, always on the lookout for new opportunities to make money. However, Trevor sometimes struggled with patience. He frequently changed businesses when things didn't go as smoothly as he had hoped, quickly moving on to something new. In his pursuit of success, the family often relocated. They moved from Pennsylvania to Florida, then to Las Vegas, followed by California, and eventually returned to Florida, where the children began homeschooling. Arden looked back on her childhood with warmth, describing it as a happy time filled with activity and togetherness. The family often hosted guests, and there was always something going on at home. Living near the beach, they would visit it almost daily, and family time was spent playing video games and board games. Although Arden enjoyed being with her mother, she felt a particularly close bond with her father. She saw herself as a daddy's girl and cherished the moments they spent together, often going out for meals, just the two of them. Although their life seemed perfect on the surface, cracks slowly began to appear in their seemingly flawless picture. As more children were born, Trevor's behavior started to change. He became increasingly jealous and gradually took control of Alisa's life. He didn't want her to have any interaction with other men. He forbade her from sitting next to men in church or being around them, and eventually he even stopped her from talking to them altogether. To make matters worse, Alisa began to suspect that Trevor's businesses were not as profitable as he claimed. In order to stay afloat, he took out more and more loans, which he later failed to repay. He also wrote bad checks, leading to several arrests. Trevor reassured Alisa that these were just temporary setbacks and that everything would eventually work out. Alisa knew that Trevor's work caused him a great deal of stress, so she did everything she could to avoid upsetting him. She agreed with him when he insisted that his troubles were due to misunderstandings or the bad intentions of others. She tried not to complain, kept herself busy, and waited for the crisis to pass. As long as she remained calm, peace could be maintained at home. In 2016, something inside Alisa broke. One day, she realized she had had enough of her controlling and irrationally jealous husband. Gathering the necessary documents, she filed for divorce. This action hit Trevor like a cold shock. He began apologizing, promising to change, and begged Alisa to give him another chance. Eventually, he convinced her to stay. However, it quickly became clear that real change was too difficult for Trevor. Instead of giving Alisa more freedom, he resumed monitoring her every move. He checked her phone, restricted her from using the car, and stopped her from seeing friends. Alisa began to feel trapped, as if her entire life had been reduced to the four walls of her own home. At this point, Alisa realized she was a victim of domestic abuse and began preparing to leave Trevor for good. However, this was far from an easy task. Trevor spent almost every minute with her, as he primarily worked from home. Alisa constantly felt his watchful eyes on her. To avoid raising suspicion, she pretended everything was fine, waiting patiently for the right moment to make her escape. One day, Trevor had to attend a business meeting. As soon as he closed the door behind him, Alisa immediately contacted an organization that helps women experiencing domestic abuse. She explained that she felt like a prisoner in her own home and had no control over her life. However, she didn't get the chance to finish her story because she suddenly heard her husband's footsteps behind her. Trevor had returned, and when he realized what Alisa was trying to do, he became furious. He refused to listen to her concerns or understand the reasons she wanted to leave. His only focus was on how to keep her with him, despite her clear unhappiness. After this incident, their relationship deteriorated even further. Alisa persistently pushed Trevor until he reluctantly agreed to a separation. Overjoyed, she moved in with a friend along with their children. After a week spent at her friend's house, they moved into a women's shelter. At that moment, Alisa had nothing but the clothes she was wearing. In this safe environment, she regained a sense of control over her life and rebuilt her self-confidence. After a few months, she was back on her feet. She bought a car, moved into her own place, found a job, and ultimately secured her divorce. Before that happened, Trevor asked to meet with Alisa, during which he confessed that he had cheated on her multiple times in the past. He also admitted that he was facing serious problems with his business and was being accused of fraud. Alisa didn't want to hear any of it. She wanted to leave, but he grabbed her by the arm, hissing, "You're not going anywhere," before pressing a long knife to her throat. He told her, "I won't hurt you if you stay and listen to what I have to say." Somehow, Alisa managed to calm him down. She promised not to report the incident to the police, but she broke that promise at the first opportunity. Unfortunately, her testimony was not enough to press any charges against Trevor. In the end, she had no evidence to support her story. Alisa couldn't completely cut off contact with Trevor, even though she desperately wanted to. She had to maintain communication with him for the sake of their children. The couple shared custody, with the children spending half the week with their mother and the other half with their father. During this time, Trevor systematically turned them against Alisa. He told them that she had maliciously called the police on him, lying about the knife incident, and claimed that she wanted to put him in jail. He portrayed her as the one responsible for the breakdown of their family. Trevor's efforts had devastating consequences. Arden turned against her mother. One day, she sneaked into Alisa's apartment, armed with chalk, and created offensive messages on the walls, labeling her mother as a traitor and expressing disdain with phrases like, "Thanks for being a jerk." Alisa's heart broke as she struggled to convince her own daughter that her father was manipulating her. However, Arden reconsidered and began to feel guilty. She apologized to her mother and wanted to reconnect with her. Alisa was overjoyed. She loved her daughter and couldn't imagine treating her like an enemy. What Alisa didn't realize was that Arden was being used as a pawn by Trevor. He had long been convincing the teenager that he wanted to repair his marriage and reconcile with his ex-wife. The perfect opportunity arose on March 10th, 2017. That night Arden was staying at Alisa's house with her younger siblings, Bryn and Grady. Throughout the day, the girl had kept in touch with her father. In the evening, she informed him that her mother had gone to bed. Then she went downstairs and opened a window, allowing Trevor to enter the house without any trouble. Shortly before 5 in the morning, Trevor drove to his ex-partner's house with their 12-year-old son, Landon. Upon arrival, he met Arden, who was waiting for him. He instructed her to stay in the car with her brother while he went inside. Trevor entered Alisa's bedroom, waking her by pouring water on her face. He then grabbed his confused and terrified ex-wife, dragging her out into the hallway, ignoring the cries of the younger children sleeping nearby. Trevor ordered Arden to take the younger siblings and drive them to his house. It is important to note that Arden was only 14 years old at the time, and legally she should not have been driving. This adds another layer of concern to the situation, highlighting how Trevor manipulated his young daughter into aiding his actions, despite her age and the illegality of driving at that time. Once the car with the children had left, he tied Alisa's hands and feet and threw her onto the bed. He coldly informed her that he had come to say goodbye, explaining that he was leaving the next day and had rented a boat. He then ordered Alisa to swallow several cold medicine tablets, after which the woman felt dizzy and he sexually assaulted her. Afterward, Trevor covered her face with a pillow and tried to strangle her. Alisa, however, begged for her life. Eventually, Trevor relented, promising to spare her if she agreed to go on a trip with him. With no other choice, Alisa, still bound, was forced to get into the car with Trevor. After some time, Trevor stopped at a store to buy more cold medicine. Alisa seized the moment when she was left alone. She jumped out of the car and tried to escape, but tripped and fell. Trevor quickly realized what was happening, grabbed her by the arm, and forced her back into the car. Furious, he started the engine and sped off. What he didn't know was that his store employee, who had witnessed the troubling scene, had already called the police and provided the car's license plate number. The authorities launched a manhunt for Trevor. Sensing danger, he stuck to local roads and made several stops in remote areas. During one of these stops, he wrote a farewell letter to his children, explaining that he and Alisa had decided to take their own lives, believing the family should not endure the trauma of divorce. On March 13th, the couple arrived in Little Harbour, a place where they had often spent family vacations. Trevor parked the car behind a large dumpster, grabbed a piece of rope, and attempted to strangle Alisa. However, he suddenly changed his mind, got back into the driver's seat without a word, and sped off again. Alisa realized then that they had been located by the police. Events unfolded rapidly after that. When Trevor realized he could not escape, he grabbed a razor blade and attempted to cut his own throat. However, he failed to inflict any serious harm. The car came to a stop in the middle of the road, surrounded by police cars. One of the officers opened the passenger door and pulled a terrified Alisa to safety. She was immediately taken to the hospital. Trevor, who had failed to take his own life, was arrested and also received medical care. He recovered quickly and admitted to attacking his ex-wife in her home, tying her up and assaulting her. However, he insisted that everything that happened afterward was with her consent, seemingly oblivious to the fact that he had committed a serious crime. In 2022, Trevor went to trial. At a certain point, he chose to represent himself, which meant he was allowed to cross-examine witnesses, including his ex-wife and children. Alisa courageously faced him in court, explaining how he had broken into her home at night, restrained her, and sexually assaulted her.
I know that they are those colors because you used them to tie me up after the struggle, so I know what colors they were.
Oh.
You came in and you put the pillow over my face with full force.
Okay. In your statement here in this courtroom, you said that the look on my face was of death or of murder.
Evil and hatred.
How do you... I'm sorry, no, I believe your statement was that you knew I was going to kill you when you saw my face. Correct?
Yes.
How did you know what was in my heart? How did you know what was in my mind?
All I saw was an expression of evil and hatred. And at that time, my thought is, he's here to kill me. I'm going to die. I was in complete shock. I can't believe that I'm alive.
Did I hold you down?
You did push me. You did hold me down. You did tie me up. You did attack me. And you did break into my home when I was sleeping. Me.
Despite his efforts to avoid responsibility, Trevor was convicted and sentenced to 3 life sentences, along with an additional 224 years in prison. The judge emphasized the overwhelming evidence and stated that he would spend the rest of his life in a Florida state prison. Alisa eventually overcame the trauma of those events. In 2018, she remarried. Her daughter Arden has since apologized several times for helping her father during that tragic night. Today, the two have a close and harmonious relationship. Alisa describes their current life as wonderful, far better than she ever imagined. Thank you for listening to this story. Until next time.